The gunshot pierced the dawn silence as Abigail Parker watched her father collapse onto the dusty wooden porch of their small ranch house. It wasn't a fatal shot, just a warning to the knee, but the message from Luther Blackwood was crystal clear. Pay what you owe, or the next bullet won't be so merciful. Your debt is due, Parker, Luther said, holstering his pistol beneath his expensive black coat. The spring sun of 1873 cast long shadows across the Colorado plains as he adjusted his bowler hat. I've been more than patient, 4 months overdue now. Abigail knelt beside her father, pressing her apron against his bleeding leg. At 22, she had already endured more hardship than most. Twice her age her mother lost to consumption 3 years prior, the drought that had devastated their cattle, and now this. We'll get your money, she promised, though they both knew the ranch had nothing left to give. Luther's thin lips curved into what might have been called a smile if there had been any warmth in it. I've a proposition that might interest you, Miss Parker. He glanced meaningfully at Abigail, his eyes traveling over her auburn hair and slender frame. My associate, Mr. Holloway, is seeking a wife. He's a wealthy man, owns half the mining operations in the territory. Her father's face went pale. Abigail is not for sale. Then I suggest you find $2,000 by Sunday, Luther replied coldly, or I'll take this ranch and throw you both to the wilderness. After Luther rode away, Abigail helped her father inside. James Parker had once been a strong man, but grief and financial strain had whittled him down. We'll find another way, she assured him, cleaning his wound, her father's eyes welled with tears. There is no other way, Abby. The cattle are gone, the crops failed. I've asked every bank from here to Denver. Then I'll go to work. I can cook at the hotel, or it would take years to earn that kind of money. He gripped her hand. I won't let him take this land. It's all we have left of your mother. 3 days later, Abigail stood in the general store in the small town of Silver Creek, trying to sell her mother's silver hairbrush, the last valuable they owned, when she overheard a conversation that chilled her blood. Holloway's getting married on Sunday, the shopkeeper told another customer. Luther Blackwood arranged it, some rancher's daughter to settle a debt. Abigail froze, the hairbrush clutched tightly in her hand. Her father had made the deal without telling her. Tears burned her eyes as she rushed from the store, nearly colliding with a tall stranger on the boardwalk. Whoa there, he said, steadying her with strong hands. She looked up into the most striking blue eyes she had ever seen, set in a sun-bronzed face beneath a worn Stetson hat. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in the saddle. Pardon me, she mumbled, attempting to step around him. You seem troubled, miss, he said, his voice carrying a slight Texas drawl. Is there something I might help with? For a brief moment, Abigail considered telling this stranger everything. Instead, she shook her head. Nothing that can be helped, I'm afraid. He touched the brim of his hat respectfully. Tucker Reeves, madam. If you change your mind, I'll be staying at the hotel for a few days. As she hurried home, Abigail couldn't shake the memory of those kind blue eyes. But what could a passing cowboy do against the likes of Luther Blackwood and Douglas Holloway? When she confronted her father, he broke down completely. It was the only way, Abby, he sobbed. Holloway has agreed to pay off the debt and give us enough to start fresh. He promised you'd be treated well. Do you know what kind of man he is? She demanded. He's 30 years my senior with 3 dead wives already. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. He's respected in these parts, has money, influence. And a reputation for cruelty, she retorted. People whisper about how his wives died. They say enough. Her father slammed his hand on the table. It's done, Abigail. The agreement is made. The wedding is Sunday. That night, Abigail wept into her pillow, then dried her tears with grim resolve. She would not be sold like cattle to a man known for his brutality. At dawn, she slipped from the house with a small bundle of belongings, intending to catch the eastbound stage to Denver, but the roads to freedom were well guarded. She hadn't made it 2 miles when Luther's men intercepted her. Going somewhere, Miss Parker? One asked, grabbing her horse's bridle. They escorted her not to her home, but to Holloway's sprawling estate on the edge of town. The gray-haired man himself greeted her on the steps, his smile not reaching his cold eyes. "I understand you had reservations about our arrangement," he said. "Rest assured, I intend to be a good husband. You'll want for nothing. Except freedom," Abigail thought bitterly. "Your father will remain at your ranch until after the wedding," Holloway continued, "to ensure there are no more misunderstandings." The meaning was clear. Her father was essentially a hostage. If she fled again, there would be consequences. For the next 3 days, Abigail was kept in luxurious imprisonment, fitted for wedding clothes, and taught the rules of Holloway's household by his stern housekeeper. She learned that his previous wives had indeed died under questionable circumstances, one from a fall downstairs, one from female hysteria, and one from a riding accident. "Mr. Holloway expects absolute obedience," the housekeeper informed her. "It makes for a harmonious marriage." On Saturday evening, with the wedding set for noon the following day, Abigail sat by her bedroom window watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. The spring storms in Colorado could be violent, but she prayed this one would be catastrophic enough to delay the ceremony, to give her time to think of some escape. Miles away, Tucker Reeves sat in the Silver Creek Saloon, nursing a whiskey and listening to the local gossip. He had come to Colorado tracking a man who had robbed his family's ranch back in Texas, but now found himself distracted by thoughts of the auburn-haired woman he'd encountered outside the general store. "Shame about James Parker's girl," the bartender was saying to another patron. "Sold to that devil Holloway to cover her daddy's debts." Tucker's hand stilled around his glass. "Parker, would that be a young woman, auburn hair about so high?" he indicated with his hand. The bartender nodded. "That's Abigail Parker, weddings tomorrow at Holloway's place." Not that anyone from town's invited Holloway keeps to himself, except when he's throwing his weight around. Tucker remembered the despair in the young woman's eyes. "Tell me about this Holloway." What he learned turned his stomach. Douglas Holloway had made his fortune in silver mining, often by dubious means. His 3 previous wives had all died within 2 years of marriage, each leaving him wealthier than before. The local law turned a blind eye to his activities, well paid to look the other way. "And this debt," Tucker pressed, "how much are we talking about?" $2,000, I heard. Parker borrowed to keep his ranch afloat after the drought. Blackwood's been squeezing folks all over the territory with his loans. Tucker finished his drink and stood. "Where would I find this Blackwood?" The bartender eyed him warily. "You don't want to tangle with him, stranger. He's got men all over." "I just want to talk business," Tucker said with a disarming smile. He found Luther Blackwood in a private poker game at the back of a seedier establishment on the edge of town. After watching for an hour, Tucker bought into the game, losing small amounts deliberately while engaging Blackwood in conversation. "Heard you're in the lending business," Tucker said casually. "I might have need of such services myself." Blackwood assessed him with shrewd eyes. "Depends on the collateral." "I've got cattle coming up from Texas," Tucker lied smoothly. "Just need a stake to secure grazing rights." By midnight, with the storm beginning to rumble outside, Tucker had earned enough of Blackwood's tentative trust to broach the subject of the Parker debt. "That rancher who's marrying his daughter off tomorrow, what if someone wanted to settle his debt instead? As an investment," Blackwood laughed. "Why would you throw away good money on Parker's worthless land?" "Let's just say I see potential," Tucker replied. "Would you accept payment from a third party?" "Money's money," Blackwood shrugged. "But you're too late. The deal with Holloway is done and he's paying me a handsome commission above the debt." Tucker nodded thoughtfully. "Can't blame a man for trying." He left the game shortly after, having lost $100 but gained valuable information. Outside, the rain had started, fat drops quickly turning to a downpour. Thunder cracked overhead as Tucker mounted his horse and turned not toward the hotel, but in the direction of the Parker ranch. James Parker answered the door with a shotgun, his injured leg clearly paining him. "What do you want at this hour?" he demanded, rain whipping around the porch. "Mr. Parker, my name is Tucker Reeves. I met your daughter in town," Tucker explained quickly. "I know about the arrangement with Holloway." Parker's face hardened. "That's private family business, sir. I've heard about Holloway's previous wives. Your daughter's in danger." You think I don't know that? Parker's voice broke. But what choice do I have? Luther will take everything if I don't pay. Tucker stepped closer. I can help. I've got money saved, not enough for the whole debt, but it wouldn't matter if you had all the money in Denver, Parker interrupted bitterly. Abigail's at Holloway's place now. They're keeping her there until the wedding. The place is guarded like a fortress. Tucker's jaw set determinedly. Then I'll need to know everything about that fortress. Through the night, as the storm intensified, James Parker detailed everything he knew about Holloway's estate, its layout, the number of guards, the planned ceremony. By dawn, the rain was coming down in sheets, turning the roads to mud, but Tucker was already riding toward Holloway's property, a plan forming in his mind. Abigail woke to the sound of thunder and the housekeeper knocking insistently at her door. You need to start preparing, Miss Parker, the woman announced. Mr. Holloway wants the ceremony at noon, rain or no. Through her window, Abigail could see the storm battering the landscape. Part of her hoped the preacher wouldn't be able to make it through such weather, but she knew Holloway would find a way. As she was helped into the white wedding dress, a mockery of what should have been a joyous occasion, Abigail fought back tears. The dress had belonged to Holloway's last wife, altered hastily to fit her smaller frame. You should be grateful, the housekeeper admonished, noticing her expression. Many girls would envy your position. Abigail said nothing. She had spent her captivity searching for any means of escape and found none. The windows were locked, the doors guarded. Even if she managed to flee, where would she go in this storm? And what would happen to her father? By 11 o'clock, the rain had somehow intensified. Holloway appeared at her door, frowning at the weather. We'll proceed as planned, he informed her. The preacher is already here. Your father has arrived as well. Abigail's heart leapt. May I see him? After the ceremony, Holloway replied coldly. I won't risk any last-minute dramatics. Left alone for her final moments as Abigail Parker, she pressed her forehead against the cool window glass, watching lightning split the sky. Somewhere in that deluge was freedom, if only she could reach it. A movement caught her eye, a figure on horseback, approaching from the cover of the trees rather than the main road. The rider was drenched, hunched against the storm, but there was something familiar in his bearing. Her breath caught. It couldn't be the cowboy from town. Before she could be certain, her door opened again. It was time. In the grand parlor, a small group had assembled. Holloway, smug in his finest suit, Luther Blackwood, irritated by the rain that had soaked him on his journey, her father, pale and defeated in a corner chair, the preacher, nervously checking his pocket watch, and half a dozen of Holloway's men, ostensibly guests but clearly there to ensure everything proceeded as planned. Abigail entered on trembling legs. No music played, no smiling faces greeted her. This was a business transaction, nothing more. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. Holloway stepped forward to take her arm, his grip painfully tight. Let us begin, he instructed the preacher. The nervous man had just opened his Bible when a tremendous crash of thunder shook the house, followed by the sound of breaking glass from another room. One of Holloway's men hurried out to investigate. Probably just a tree branch, Holloway said dismissively. Continue. The preacher cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, another crash interrupted, followed by shouting and what sounded like a scuffle. What the devil? Blackwood exclaimed. Holloway signaled to his remaining men. Check it out. As they moved toward the door, it burst open. Tucker Reeves stood there, dripping wet, a gun in each hand. Behind him lay two unconscious guards. This wedding's over, he announced, Holloway's face contorted with rage. Who the hell are you? A friend of the bride, Tucker replied, his eyes finding Abigail's. Miss Parker, I believe you're being coerced into this marriage. Is that correct? Before she could answer, Holloway pulled her roughly against him, producing a small derringer from his pocket. This is my house, cowboy. You're trespassing on private property during a private ceremony. There's nothing private about selling a woman to pay a debt, Tucker retorted. Mr. Parker, are you here willingly? James Parker struggled to his feet. Abigail, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you, our land. Shut up, Parker, Blackwood snapped. Tucker kept his gun steady. I'm giving you one chance, Holloway. Let Miss Parker go and we all walk away from this. Holloway's laugh was cold. "You're outnumbered, boy. My men are all over this property." "We're all over this property," Tucker corrected. Amazing what a good rainstorm and the element of surprise can accomplish. For a tense moment, no one moved. Rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled overhead. Then Holloway made his decision, shoving Abigail roughly aside and firing his derringer at Tucker. The small bullet grazed Tucker's shoulder, but he didn't flinch. His return shot was more accurate, striking Holloway's hand and sending the derringer flying. Holloway howled in pain. Blackwood, seeing the tide turn, drew his own weapon, but James Parker moved with unexpected speed, tackling him to the ground. "Run, Abigail," Tucker shouted. She didn't need to be told twice. Gathering her cumbersome skirts, Abigail raced toward Tucker. They backed out of the room together as her father struggled with Blackwood. "My father," she began. "Will be right behind us," Tucker assured her. They reached the entrance hall just as James Parker emerged from the parlor, limping but upright, Blackwood's gun now in his possession. "Holloway's men will be coming," James warned. "Then we'd best not be here," Tucker replied, leading them out into the rain. 3 horses waited, sheltered partially by the estate's portico. Tucker helped Abigail mount one, the white wedding dress instantly soaked as they rode into the storm. They rode hard through the downpour, taking shelter finally in an abandoned line shack miles from Holloway's estate. As her father kept watch by the single window, Tucker built a small fire in the rusty stove. "Why did you come for me?" Abigail asked, still stunned by the day's events. She had changed into spare clothes Tucker had brought men's attire, but dry. Tucker smiled, wincing slightly as he bandaged his grazed shoulder. "I couldn't stand by knowing what was happening. No one should be forced to marry against their will." "But you risked your life for strangers," she pressed. He looked at her steadily. "From the moment I saw you in town, you didn't feel like a stranger to me, Miss Parker." The simple honesty in his words warmed her more than the fire. "The debt still stands," her father said heavily from his post by the window. "Blackwood will come after us with the law on his side." Tucker shook his head. "I don't think so. Before I came to Holloway's, I paid a visit to the sheriff with some interesting documents." He reached into his saddlebag, pulling out a leather portfolio. "I originally came to Colorado tracking a man who robbed my family. While investigating him, I discovered he worked for Blackwood. These papers detail Blackwood's loan sharking operation across 3 territories, including loans to the sheriff himself." James Parker's eyes widened. "You mean, the sheriff was very interested to learn he wasn't the only one being squeezed," Tucker explained. "He's probably arresting Blackwood right now, storm or no storm." Abigail stared at him in amazement. "And Holloway?" The sheriff had questions about his previous wives as well. Seems the doctor who declared them all dead of natural causes was also in debt to Blackwood. For the first time in months, hope bloomed in Abigail's chest. "So we're free. The debt will likely be invalidated due to Blackwood's illegal interest rates," Tucker nodded, "but your ranch still needs help." "We'll manage," her father said, pride returning to his voice. "We always have." Tucker glanced at Abigail. "Actually, I had a proposition. My brother and I have a cattle operation in Texas. We've been looking to expand northward, establish a partner ranch in better grazing territory. Your land would be perfect." James Parker looked suspicious. "I'm not looking to sell." "Not asking you to," Tucker clarified. "I'm proposing a partnership. My cattle, your land, we split the profits. No loans, no debt, just honest ranching." The offer hung in the air, almost too good to believe. Abigail studied Tucker's face, searching for deception and finding none. "Why would you do this?" she asked softly. Tucker met her gaze directly. "Initially, because it seemed the right thing to do. Now," he smiled slightly. "Now I find myself hoping for reasons to stay in Colorado a while longer." The rain continued through the night, but by morning had softened to a gentle patter. They rode back to the Parker Ranch to find the sheriff waiting for them, confirming everything Tucker had predicted. Blackwood was in custody, his operation exposed. Holloway had fled, but warrants were being prepared based on new testimony about his wives' deaths. Over the following weeks, the partnership between the Parker Ranch and Tucker's Texas operation took shape. Fresh cattle arrived, new hands were hired, and the ranch began to thrive again. Tucker sent for his younger brother to help manage the Texas end, making it clear he intended to stay in Colorado. Each day, Abigail found herself drawn more to the quiet cowboy who had ridden through a storm to save her. His integrity, his gentle humor, his unwavering respect for her opinions about the ranch all stood in stark contrast to the future she had nearly been forced into. On a warm evening in late July, they sat together on the porch swing her father had built years ago, watching fireflies dance across the meadow. "I received a letter today," Tucker said, breaking their comfortable silence. "The authorities in Denver have seized all of Blackwood's assets. His victims will receive compensation." Abigail nodded. "Father mentioned the same. It will help many families rebuild." "There's something else I've been meaning to ask you," Tucker continued, suddenly appearing uncharacteristically nervous. "These past months working together, getting to know you," she turned to face him, heart quickening. "Abigail Parker, I find myself hopelessly in love with you," he confessed, taking her hand. "I know it hasn't been that long, and I'll understand if you need more time, but I wanted you to know my intentions are honorable and my feelings sincere." Joy bubbled up within her. "Tucker Reeves, are you courting me?" His smile was sheepish. "Trying to, though I fear I'm making a mess of it." "On the contrary," she said, squeezing his hand. "I think you're doing admirably well, especially considering our first meeting involved you saving me from a forced marriage. Sets a high bar for all future gallantry," he agreed, his blue eyes twinkling. Abigail grew serious. "What you did that day riding through that terrible storm, facing down Holloway and his men, no one has ever fought for me like that." "I would do it again in a heartbeat," he said softly, "though preferably without the bullet graze." She laughed, then sobered. "I believe I'm falling in love with you too, Tucker, not because you rescued me, but because of the man you've shown yourself to be every day since." The happiness that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, a promise rather than a demand. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Tucker rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this properly, court you properly, no rushing, no pressure." "I'd like that," she whispered. By autumn, their courtship was the talk of Silver Creek. The cowboy from Texas and the rancher's daughter made a striking pair, whether riding the range together or dancing at the harvest festival. James Parker watched their growing love with approval, his own health improving as the ranch prospered under their combined care. On Christmas Eve, with snow falling gently outside and a fire crackling in the hearth, Tucker proposed properly, with a simple gold ring and heartfelt words. Abigail accepted without hesitation, her heart full to bursting. They were married the following spring, not in Holloway's oppressive mansion, but in the small church in Silver Creek, surrounded by friends and neighbors. The bride wore her mother's restored wedding dress, altered with loving care, and carried wildflowers gathered from the meadows where their cattle now grazed. As they exchanged vows, Abigail thought of that stormy day nearly a year before, when marriage had seemed a prison sentence. Now it was the beginning of a beautiful journey with a man who had proved his love not just with grand gestures, but with daily kindness and unwavering partnership. Their wedding reception was held at the ranch, tables set up under blooming apple trees. As Tucker led her in their first dance as husband and wife, he whispered in her ear, "Worth riding through every storm for." Abigail smiled up at him, her heart overflowing. "My hero cowboy, your partner," he corrected gently, "in everything, always." Years passed, and the Parker Reeves Ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. They expanded their operations, built a larger home, and welcomed 2 children, a boy with his father's blue eyes and a girl with her mother's auburn hair and determined spirit. Sometimes during spring storms, Abigail would stand on their porch watching lightning dance across the distant mountains, remembering the day that had changed everything. And beside her would be Tucker, his arm around her waist, his love a constant in a world that had once seemed so uncertain. In those moments, she would lean against him, grateful beyond words for the cowboy who had ridden through the rain to claim not a bride sold to pay a debt, but a partner to love for a lifetime.